this meeting of the Board of Adjustment, a special meeting
Right.
to order, if we could. And maybe before we do roll call, because you outline us a little bit on membership of this tonight. So
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Just so before we get started with the Board of Adjustment meeting, typically membership of the Board of Adjustment is 5 members and 2 alternates. It is the trustee appointed to the Planning Commission by the Board of Trustees. That is Katie Souls. She is absent this evening. And the other 4 members of the Board of Adjustment are the 4 mayorally appointed members. One of those positions is currently vacant due to Joy McCoy's resignation. So we currently have 3 of the regular Board of Adjustment members present, as well as our 2 alternates, being Brian as the mayor and Peggy as the trustee appointed to the Planning Commission by the mayor. So I don't think there's any action needed by the chair, but simply recognizing that our 5 voting members will be the 5 folks that are present at the meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have a roll call. Good.
Margaret Bowles,
Brian Cirkvenick. Robert Ganusi.
And then we have is it Peggy online or?
Peggy, can you unmute?
Peggy Smith.
Thank you, and Andy Miller. Thanks, everybody. So could I have a motion to approve the Board of Adjustment agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And then a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is the minutes from March 26, 2025. So quite some time ago, but those had not been approved yet.
February 25th.
Well, it says March 26, 2025.
The Board of Adjustment.
Am I in the wrong? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so open forum for the Board of Adjustment, not the Planning Commission. Anybody online?
If there's anybody online that would just like to speak for the Board of Adjustment, please raise your hand.
Nobody? Okay. So discussion of possible action is a request to extend the duration of approval for height variance, the Ascent condominiums. Start with the staff report.
Thank you, Chair Miller. So this item is a request to extend the duration of approval for the height variance that was approved for the Ascent condominiums development. So just some background, this is a 24-unit for sale multifamily residential development that is proposed adjacent to and within the current Exports, formerly Ski Broker building. As part of this land use application, which included a major site plan and final plat, the applicant also requested a height variance for a maximum 49.5 feet building height, as opposed to 45, which is the standard height in the business zone district. So if you all recall, this was originally submitted as a administrative height variance. Staff evaluated that and denied that administrative variance. The applicant appealed that denial, and then the Board of Adjustment ultimately approved that variance last February of 2025, I should say. And because building permits for this development have not been issued at this time, the height variance would otherwise expire in approximately 1 week on April 2nd, unless extended by the Board of Adjustment. On March 3rd, the applicant requested a 6-month extension to this approval period, so staff is bringing that request forward to you all this evening. So in evaluation of this request, this section of the code allows the granting authority to grant a single extension of any land use application approval for a time period that does not exceed the time period of the initial approval. And because the variance for this development has not received a previous extension, and because the 6-month extension that is requested does not exceed that initial duration of approval, which was approximately 1 year, then this extension can be granted by the Board of Adjustment. In staff's opinion, this extension is necessarily primarily because of a roughly 9-month gap that occurred in submittals last year after the major site plan and final plat were approved by the Board of Trustees in April. There was kind of a pause in submittals from the applicant with the town. I do want to note that they did continue to work on their plans during that time. Applicant had correspondence with town staff in September of last year, but they didn't resubmit their materials until December of last year. And since December, they have made an effort to, address all review comments and get their approvals finalized, but they're just running up against this April deadline, hence the need for this extension. So for this reason, given the good faith effort on the applicant to try and finalize their site plan and plat documents, staff recommends that this variance be granted an extension by the Board of Adjustment. I do also want to note that last week on March 18th, the Board of Trustees separately approved an extension to their major site plan and final plat. So those aspects of the land use application have already received an extension, and extending the height variance approval would be consistent with the Board of Trustees action.
What action does the applicant have to take to trigger the, what do they have to do so they don't need an extension? What's the step?
Yeah, in this case, I think because the variance is tied to building height and that building height is tied to the site plan approval, what would, I guess the next step in that process is getting a building permit issued.
So that does it.
Mhm.
So then they wouldn't need, as long as they get building permit, they don't need another extension.
Correct.
So that's all they have to do in 6 months
Correct.
is get a building permit.
Mhm.
And then we're good.
Correct. Yeah. Not even, initiate construction per se, or certainly not, receive a certificate of occupancy and complete the project, simply receiving that issued building permit.
That puts them on a timeline for the permit for completion too, so.
Right. Yeah. Once the building permit is issued, there's a separate, timeline and for that.
So any questions from the board at all? Or
All good.
pretty fresh? Anything from the applicant at all? Okay. Okay.
Hey, Clark Lipscomb for the record. No, we're ready to go. We were actually ready to break ground April 1st. But we've got some utility matters that we're trying to deal with Excel Energy,
Okay.
Platinum stuff. So hopefully that gets resolved imminently. But other than that, the architects are hard at work and close to having final CDs ready to submit for permit. They'll probably be ready before we work out things with Excel. So the way that's going. So, but no, we're ready to go.
6 months is enough then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
I kind of thought we would, I thought we wouldn't even need the extension meeting when we get it finished, but
Yeah.
really it was that platinum issue is probably the biggest issue.
Okay.
So we should be good.
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah, I think real close. But thank you guys.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So anything from the public at all? Okay. Okay, motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the extension. I don't know what else to say. Is it-
Resolution 2026-0301. Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion to approve BOA Resolution 2026-0301, approving an extension to the duration of approval for the ascent height variance.
Second.
Any other discussion? Take a vote, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Anyone in opposition?
Do we hear from Peg? She's online.
Peggy? I lost her, but anyway, that's a majority, so.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks, everybody. So any other business for the Board of Adjustment? Okay, take a motion to adjourn the Board of Adjustment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we'll move right over to the planning commission meeting. And take a roll call for the planning commission, please.
Margaret Bowles,
Brian Circovenic. Robert Ganusi.
Peggy, did we get you back or?
Peggy Smith,
Thank you, Peggy. And Andy Miller, thanks. So on approval of the agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Thanks. So the consent agenda is the minutes from February 25th, 2026. Have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. So open forum for the planning commission. Anybody have any remarks for the planning commission? 3 minutes or less.
If anyone online would like to speak for open forum for the planning commission, please raise your hand.
Okay. So discussion and possible action is the 255 Mill Avenue sketch plan.
Great. Thank you, Chair Miller. And Antoinette, before I get started, would you mind making Jeff Van Sambeek a co-host? Perfect. Thank you. So I didn't forget. Great. Well, thank you, Chair Miller and Planning Commission. The item on our agenda this evening is a sketch plan for 255 Mill Avenue. So I know we've reviewed quite a few sketch plans recently, but just as a refresher about the purpose and intention of these, they're established in our code with the intention to simply provide the town the opportunity to describe our vision for the development to the applicant, and it gives the applicant an opportunity to discuss their plans for a development and explain how those plans will further the town's vision. And it also helps obtain input and direction from town staff early on in the development process. And also per town code, the applicant or town staff may opt to present the sketch plan to the planning commission for discussion and feedback. So we are doing so this evening. So the applicant and property owner is 255 Mill LLC. We have Tom Fowler here in the room with us representing the property owner, as well as Jeff Van Sambeek and Nathan Meeson on the Zoom call, also as part of the project team. This project is located on interior lots located on the north side of Mill Avenue between Highway 40 and the railroad. The sketch plan proposes a total of 13 residential units, as well as approximately 1,800 square feet of general commercial space. And this project is in the Riverwalk zone. Staff first met with the applicant about a year ago, and they submitted their sketch plan just about 2 months ago in late January. So definitely excited to see this brought forward, and excited to hear your feedback. So here's a look at the property location, again, on the north side of Mill Avenue, bounded there in red. And here's a look at that property in our zoning map. So primarily surrounded by other properties, also in the Riverwalk zone. The divide condos to the south of Mill Avenue are high-density multifamily. And then there are some properties just to the east of Doc Suzy that are zoned business. Here's a look at the existing conditions of the property. I just wanted to note that there are 2 single-family detached structures, cottages. They are smaller in scale on the property. They do, each have a active water and sewer tap. So there are active uses on the property, but in a way, this is a pretty whole-scale reimagining and trying to use the entitlements of the Riverwalk zone district. So looking at the site plan, on the left is, again, just a plan view with a white background. On the right shows the sketch plan overlain with aerial imagery together to better give a sense of this site in relation to its neighbors. But functionally, the proposal again includes 1,800 square feet of ground floor retail space facing Mill Avenue, one residential unit in the rear, and then residential units on 2.5 floors above it. The fourth floor is kind of a loft area. The sketch plan proposes perpendicular parking along Mill Avenue, as well as a few spaces directly off of the alley, and some tuck under parking spaces as well. So to get a better sense of the scale of the development, here are some 3D renderings. Looking kind of at all sides, you can see from the east view the tuck under parking spaces. And even though this is a black and white rendering, some of the proposed facade materials are evident. If I could zoom in here, such as some stone masonry and brick, and then other, maybe more generic siding or stucco type material proposed. Here's a look at the elevation, kind of at a scaled architectural view. And I just wanted to note that, at this level of detail and the height that is being shown, this does comply with the 45 feet maximum building height, as you can see at the very top line. So within the, base height that's allowed. So next I wanted to talk about a few of the things that staff identified in our review. I will be kind of brief on these, but please feel free to interrupt me with any questions. Want to give the applicant an opportunity to talk about their plans. After they submitted this and staff reviewed it, they indicated that they would be tweaking some things. So definitely want to give them an opportunity to share any updates to their concept. So starting off with residential density in the Riverwalk Zone District, the base density that is allowed is 20 units per acre. That can be increased by one of two different means. One of them is the provision of ground floor commercial uses. Doing so increases the density up to 40 units per acre. The other avenue is by providing deed restricted affordable units. And when that is done, there is no maximum unit per acre density, but the development still has to meet all other zoning requirements, height, setbacks, parking, etc. So this sketch plan, as it was provided to the town, envisioned using the ground floor commercial density bonus, and this would allow a total of 12 units on the site. The site is just under a third of an acre. Additionally, a 13th unit could be allowed based on staff's interpretation of our ADU regulations. So in speaking to that briefly, the sketch plan proposed keeping one of the two existing structures on the property. The one nearest to the alley was proposed to remain. This could be considered an ADU, which our code does allow in the Riverwalk zone and on multifamily residential sites more generally. Again, it could be considered an ADU so long as it meets our requirements on having a kitchen and bathroom, having its own utility access and shutoffs, as well as being no greater than 50% of the size or square footage of a principal unit. So this kind of introduces a bit of a quirk with this proposal simply because the applicant is proposing to condominiumize this building so that the units are sold individually. So if this is ultimately what is pursued, this, cottage ADU would have to be kind of tied to one of those condo units as a, the principal and accessory unit in order to be compliant with our code and how our ADU regulations are written and administered.
Question?
Mm-hmm.
You say it has to be tied to a unit in the main building.
Mm-hmm.
Any unit or a unit that would be in close proximity to cottage A?
It doesn't necessarily need to be in close proximity. I mean, it could be a unit on the second or third floor. It doesn't necessarily need to be the ground floor unit per se, if that's kind of what you're asking.
Yeah, I was asking if if it's to be connected to an existing property that's being built,
Mhm.
wouldn't it make sense for it to be a connecting unit that's close by cottage A?
Yeah, I guess they're connecting in the sense of their ownership can't be severed from one another.
Okay,
So the ADU cannot be sold separately. Its ownership has to be tied to that of another residential unit.
okay,
Um, and again, so as long as there is that kind of legal ownership framework, if you will, for the ADU, um, its physical proximity on the site is less of a concern, or it's something that I guess it's not really spoken to in our code, I would say.
okay. All right, I get it.
Big is that cottage?
So
Yeah.
Cliff Clayton was born in that cottage.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
It's tiny.
Oh, so
So-
it's really small. So it's
Yeah.
not an issue with the 50%.
For some of the units, it could meet that, and we can pull up the sketch plan later. The applicant can, when they're presenting, they can clarify. My recollection is that this cottage A was on the order of between 400 and 500 square feet, and I think the ground floor ADA accessible unit was the largest, and may meet that 50% requirement.
Just curious, did it belong to the HOA as a caretaker unit or
Um,
kind of an odd concept?
Yeah, potentially. I think our code is maybe somewhat silent on that. I think the the ADU itself is kind of counted outside of that unit per acre calculation. So for other zone districts like our multifamily residential zones that allow a certain number of units per lot or per lot size, you could build that number of units and say a triplex or fourplex and still have an ADU on top of that. So it's kind of like an additional bonus unit, but as far as it being a caretaker unit, I think our code is relatively silent on
Yeah.
that, but
Why could they not just condominiumize that cottage as
Yeah, I was
well?
getting ready to ask the same question.
So it gets them over the number of units.
right. So in this case, because they're seeking this 40 unit per acre density, or at least that was initially proposed, that caps them at 12 units overall. So 12 units in the main building plus the ADU is kind of
Okay.
the workaround to that. The other alternative is if the applicant pursues the deed restriction density bonus option, then they're not tied to an arbitrary cap. So they could have this as a 13th unit and it not be considered an ADU. I think the only wrinkle with that is how multifamily residential is defined in our code. It states that all units are in a single building. So this would be a multifamily residential development with units in multiple buildings. But again, if that's something that, the planning commission views as allowable, we can change our definition. So. Any other questions on this aspect of the density?
What's the setback from the side of the building to the west?
Yeah, so in the Riverwalk zone for a mixed use proposal, there are no minimum lot setbacks.
Like this plat, you know what that setback is?
Um,
I wonder if it triggers the fire.
It had space. See,
yeah, there was more room or a decent amount of room on the west side. It just eyeballing it, it looks,
15 feet.
yeah, 12 to 15 feet, just looking at
This
the parking
just
space.
brings up an interesting question we may face in the future. If you're within the fire requirements where you've got a fireproof assembly, there's an existing building next door to a building that wants to get into that setback, who pays for that existing building to be
Hmm.
fireproof? So I would assume it would have to be the developer, but
Yeah,
I wonder if our code even addresses that. So
I don't think so.
yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, that's something to look at. So,
Yeah.
I mean, because the sketch plan here helps us kind of identify things that may be shortcomings in our code. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. 'Cause I'd hate to think that a homeowner would have to do thousands of dollars worth of improvement to their building to allow the neighbor to get within the fire setback. So
Mhm.
just a thought.
Excellent point. So last thing I'll touch on as far as the residential density. So for this ground floor commercial density bonus provision in the Riverwalk zone, the language in our code says that it's met if at least 40% of the ground floor of the structure is commercial. So in staff's view, we were considering the tuck under parking area and basically looking at, everything bounded in this red box here as the ground floor area of the structure. The reason for this is because the second and third floors have occupiable space in this area. So we just use that larger ratio. I think it could certainly be argued that a interpretation of our code should look at the occupied space on the ground floor and exclude that tuck under parking area, even if there are occupied uses above it. And that is what the applicant initially assumed. And kind of looking at this L shape here as the ground floor of the structure. I think, admittedly, that is probably the most correct reading of the exact language in our code, but I think maybe reading it this way has simply, the potential to maybe lead to outcomes that are not as desirable. I'm thinking about a situation where maybe the majority of the ground floor area is dedicated to tuck under parking, and there's a very small, you know, kind of token commercial space, if you will. I do think the applicant clearly is making a good faith effort to balance uses here on the ground floor. Um, you know, if you include the tuck under parking area, that commercial ratio is about 35%. So they're not too far off from the 40% already. But if you remove it and if you look at this area, they're at approximately 48%. So meeting it if you calculate it that way. Again, an alternative to this ground floor commercial provision is providing deed restricted housing that would achieve the same, density result essentially. Any questions on this? Maybe thoughts on how to?
My thought is whatever we do here, we ought to be consistent.
Absolutely.
So if we're, yeah, so, I mean, I personally feel like it should not be included.
Parking should not be.
Yeah, that's just my.
Yeah.
Feeling.
Yeah,
But you could have a
I-
whole underground
yeah.
kind of tuck under for the whole area. So that's my feeling, but
Well, and counter to that a little bit is that hopefully we can encourage covered parking. It solves a lot of snow maintenance problems. But I get what you're saying, Margaret. I mean, it's, and what the end result of that could be a covered parking area with just a tiny little shop that really goes against what we're trying to do to foster commercial in these zones. I do want to reveal here that I'm next door to this. So I'm to the east of this site, so I'm 267 Mill Avenue. So I have mixed feelings about it. But obviously I've been involved in the rezoning and all the way through and understood that would be the end result of this. But anyway, the parking question is a tough one, but I've gone over in my mind over the years, how can we end up with a lot of covered parking in this town and not so many problems with snowbanks and moving snow and everything else. So it is kind of a tough one. So, and maybe we come up with a ratio that gives some credit to some ratio that we don't go beyond with covered parking. And this is a pretty good example. I mean, they're very close to the 40%, and we're gaining some covered parking here too. So, yeah.
no, I agree. I agree with you. Just concerned about the unknown if we.
Right.
Yeah, so we
What-
need to put some math to it for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
What's the square footage of the commercial space?
Just under 1,800 square feet.
Pretty good size space.
Yeah. Some good sized space.
Yeah.
So, go ahead and we'll finish the presentation, a little bit more
Okay.
discussion, and bring the applicant and the public into it.
Okay, I'll be quick on these next few,
No
so we
worries.
have more time for open discussion. Um, so the next items I just wanted to highlight deal with parking and the sidewalk. So the applicant proposed 7 perpendicular parking spaces along Mill Avenue, mostly within the Mill Avenue right-of-way to serve the development. On-street parking is allowed to serve, the parking minimums for properties in the Riverwalk zone. One of the quirks with this was this proposal, the alignment of these parking spaces were kind of reflecting the existing paved area of Mill Avenue, which I'll show on the next slide as well. And this resulted in this, kind of skewed parking angle in relation to the building and the lot line. And then you had this sidewalk of varying width that was, approximately 5 feet at the narrowest and then widening out going to the west. So this kind of shows those parking spaces angled to kind of respect the existing alignment of Mill Avenue, if you will. But one other thing is that sidewalks are required to be a minimum of 8 feet in width in the Riverwalk zone. So this sketch plan isn't compliant with that provision of our code. And I also, in staff's opinion, I think perpendicular spaces may not be consistent with the long-term vision of the street or just, our kind of downtown streets in Fraser more generally. So something that staff proposed to the applicant was, first locate the sidewalk fully within the Mill Avenue right-of-way. Mill Avenue has 60 feet here. This white line here at the bottom is the southern end of the right-of-way boundary. So within a 60-foot right-of-way, you can fit, 8-foot sidewalks on both sides, parallel parking spaces on both sides, and a travel lane. That's what the town is doing over on Clayton Court this summer. So the initial, kind of suggestion from town staff is to do a similar type of street section, and kind of as, an initial phase, or say what the applicant would simply be responsible for is the area in front of their property. So simply just building the sidewalk lot line to lot line and paving this area. It looks like you could maybe fit 4, but certainly 3 parallel spaces in this area in front of their property. And at a minimum, this could be viewed as an interim condition, as staff and the planning commission and board of trustees kind of envisions a more finalized vision for the entirety of Mill Avenue, if that makes sense. If something other than 8-foot sidewalks and parallel parking on both sides is envisioned, I mean, there are ways that angled parking could potentially be accommodated. That does take up, approximately the same area as perpendicular. So you're not really saving a whole lot of space with angled as you are with parallel spaces, but you can fit a bit more parking in. And yeah, so certainly alternatives to consider.
So the previous slide, the parking goes all the way across the valley pan then.
Correct.
So that's, yeah, I don't know, that's pretty narrow street as it is. What's the pavement width on Mill there?
I think the asphalted section is probably 22 to 24 feet. And
Okay.
then the valley pans, I think, are typically 4 feet
4
wide.
feet wide,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are they needing the perpendicular parking in order to meet
Yeah, they're pretty short on
parking
parking.
requirements? Are they short on parking for the number of units? Is that why they want to do perpendicular versus your suggestion of parallel?
Yes, so with the perpendicular spaces, they were in staff's view, I think just 1, maybe 2 spaces short, depending on how you do the math. So even with the perpendicular and the, uh, amount of commercial square footage being proposed and the number of units in their bedroom, bedroom counts, again, depending on how you round, 1 or 2 spaces deficient. So even when you go from perpendicular to parallel and you lose 3 or 4 of those spaces, that creates more of a deficiency, certainly with this proposal. But that's a great segue into the next kind of item for discussion is that in our code, there is an allowance, a 10% parking reduction for properties that are within 250 feet of a transit corridor, which our code defines as Highway 40. In staff's opinion, 250 feet is a very short distance. So this radius, this circle shown here is 250 feet. And, placing that kind of at the edge of Highway 40, this site is just outside of that, I would say, being down here. And, in more, say, urban contexts or when thinking about transit planning, a typical walk shed to a transit stop is anywhere from 1/8 of a mile to half of a mile. Again, I think our context here in Fraser should be viewed somewhat differently than just, general best practices. But something I did want to show for the Planning Commission is putting just a 1/4 mile radius around the site. There are 10 different Lyft bus stops, and a handful in very close proximity. I mean, Goranson Station certainly extremely walkable from the site, as well as the Amtrak station, the Mustang stop. So, I would view personally this site as being in close proximity to transit just based on this alone. But just looking at the size of even a 1/4 mile radius, then we're talking about if we amend our code to allow this, then we're talking about a potential transit reduction for most, if not all, properties in the Riverwalk Zone District. So I think it's just a balance between maybe kind of the on the ground reality of there is pretty good access to transit throughout the Riverwalk Zone District, but how
And that was the vision for the Riverwalk
Sure.
district, as a
Yeah.
walkable district, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that 10% reduction is still subject to planning commission and board approval.
Right.
And if it's not written that way, it certainly could be. It's not an automatic thing, is my understanding. So
So these again are opportunities to clean up our regulations too.
Mhm.
So.
And I would like to point out that if you're looking at lead standards, they have, radiuses that they promote for their neighborhood plans and or transit. And I believe, I'm doing this by memory now, but I believe 1/4 mile is what they use.
sure. Yeah.
If you're within 1/4 mile, then you qualify
Yeah.
for the lead standard.
Okay. Yeah.
It's something we ought to look at and be consistent.
Mhm.
But I'm certainly okay with 1/4 mile.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah.
Even in ski boots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've walked further than that in ski boots
Right.
before.
You have to just get from the stupid parking lot to the base of the mountain.
So that concludes the major items I just wanted to touch on. Certainly, there's other aspects of this proposal that we can talk about in conjunction with the applicant. But just as a reminder, next steps be a major site plan application. The applicant would also need to submit a major subdivision to combine what are currently 2 lots into one. And staff is recommending that the preliminary plat step be waived and allowing the applicant to proceed straight to a final plat. So it's an allowance in our code. If a sketch plan is submitted, staff has the ability to waive that preliminary plat. The reason being that, especially when the sketch plan comes to the planning commission, that's kind of viewed as it's not a notice public hearing, but it is a public forum for reviewing the application. So by doing that early on in the process, it's kind of allowing them to not have to do that as the preliminary plat step, but still having the public hearings for the major site plan and final plat. So it's kind of incentivizing the applicant to do this sketch plan to get this initial feedback. And by doing so, they get to skip a notice public hearing.
You see, you cited one thing in our regulation that talks about relative sizes of buildings. And this is our first major project in what was a residential area, and obviously has been a business zone for a long time. But, we've got 2 houses on either side that are 12 feet tall. Well, Bryant's is a bit taller. But, I'm not sure how we address that, you know?
Yeah, I think that is,
You know, maybe steps in the building to kind of, you know, clear story type. They've got a loft apartment on the fourth floor that, you know, maybe there's, without losing a lot of square footage, is there some way to make the mass of this look not quite so out of place in that neighborhood? Although that neighborhood, of course, could, over the years, changed all of this too, so. But I think we put that in the regulations for a reason, so.
yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, in referencing, it's from our building design, it's for commercial and use development in section 194190. There is a design guideline that speaks to the mass of buildings, and it says that they should be compatible with adjacent buildings. Again, I think it's maybe up to interpretation by the commission and our board, how much you weight, you know, what the zone district allows for this site compared to the existing uses that have been there historically. But I certainly don't argue that, you know, a building of this size would be taller than what's there adjacent to it currently.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Okay, go ahead, hear from the applicant if we could. Hear from the applicant if we could.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, online, gotcha, sorry. I thought he was texting. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go for it.
All right, sounds good. So my name is Jeff Van Sandbeek. I'm the architect on the project. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Awesome. I will share my screen because I think that'll be helpful if I find the right button. Right in the middle, the giant green one. There we go. So we've, after making our submittal back in, I guess it was December, we did come in and have a meeting with staff after receiving the comments on the initial sketch plan. And it was, in my opinion, it was an incredibly helpful meeting for us anyway, to get a better understanding of sort of what we didn't understand about the Riverwalk District Zone and what the goals were there. So we actually took a lot of the feedback from that plan, that meeting and the sketch plan comments that we received, and have implemented them in a kind of revised version. So I figure I'll just kind of run through this quickly, and then any questions, happy to answer them about why we made the changes we did. But I think this kind of mitigates a lot of the more significant concerns that staff had. Overall look at the building hasn't changed a whole lot. We did kind of freshen it up a little bit, and added some of the features that staff notes in their comments. But the big change that we made is actually how we address the site. The plan now is actually to do tuck under parking, or not tuck under, but actually do a parking level underneath the building. So not fully underground because of the limited space we have on the site to actually ramp, but to come off the alley with a drive aisle that ramps down to essentially like a garden level basement, and do all the parking underneath the building, or most of the parking underneath the building. We still likely would want to keep these 3 surface spaces. And then the hope is to keep the cottage and a parking space next to that cottage. And then change the parking along Mill to be, as staff recommended, the parallel parking and the 8-foot sidewalk in the right of way. So with this change, we actually also kind of rethought what we wanted to do with commercial space. We decided that it would actually be more beneficial for us and the way we think this building would get used to essentially eliminate or to stop trying to go after the commercial allowance for the density increase, and instead go for the density increase with affordable housing. So our plan now is to maintain some commercial space on this, because I think that is a key element of the Riverwalk District, and also a feature of this building that we have a potential tenant that would be interested in the space, and so we're trying to size it appropriate for that. But now that we're going after affordable housing as the density waiver, we're able to eliminate all the kind of weirdness with the ADU of the cottage. Essentially, the cottage is a unit, and we now have that 1 unit plus 15 units in the building that we need to find parking for. So We've got underground parking in the basement of the building. I'll just do it here. So essentially, the driveway comes in the back. We've got parking on both sides of a kind of basic parking structure, 2 stair towers and the elevator connecting that to the rest of the building. The main level consists of 5 units of varying size, a number of 1 bedrooms, a studio, and a couple of 2 bedroom, or yeah, a couple of 1 2 bedroom, sorry. The second floor is pretty much the same as it was in the initial application, some minor tweaks to where some balconies are and that sort of thing. And then the third and its connection to the lofts, the 4th level, also similar, but we did actually bring 1 other unit all the way up to a loft level. So in the original application, we had 3 units that went to the loft. Now we have 4 that go to the loft. So some changes there. We also did want to try to get to sort of a common area on that loft level for the tenants that don't have access to a rooftop deck. So this would be a common rooftop deck on the front of the building that you can kind of see in that front rendering, just to kind of amenitize the building a little bit more. So yeah, so that was sort of the feedback we kind of took in from that meeting. The location of the building right now, rather than trying to center on the lot, because we're bringing this drive aisle in, we want that drive aisle centered on the building. We're trying to keep the cottage, so that's sort of driving the building location right now. We do still have a setback. I don't have it dimensioned on here, so I apologize for that, but roughly 12 feet on the west side and more like approximately 18 feet on the east side. The idea with those side yards is access to the ground floor units, as well as some open kind of green space for the building, and also separation from the neighboring properties. I heard the conversation about, how do we mitigate the scale of this building relative to the scale of the existing neighbors. We're hopeful that the extended side setbacks are a mitigation strategy for that. But right now we are trying to lean into the building mass and height that's allowed for the Riverwalk district, because I think that's the goal for the area. So rather than limiting it to where we're at now, actually leaning into the future. We did look at that. The other thing we were thinking about was that the buildings across the street, while the neighboring immediately adjacent properties are single-story residential, single family. The ones across the street are 2-story with some higher roof lines, and just a little bit to the southwest, you've got some larger multi-story, multi-family residential buildings. So while we are definitely a bigger scale than the immediately adjacent neighbors, I don't feel that we're out of scale overall. So I'm hopeful that that also mitigates some of those concerns. And I guess I did want to also respond. You mentioned a concern about fire separation and what the requirements are for the neighboring properties. We do have that property. Well, really both of the neighboring properties are by building code too close to the property line to not be fire rated. The building code requirement relates to our building and our property line. It doesn't actually relate to our building and the neighboring building. So no construction on our site would trigger any improvement requirements to a neighboring site unless there's something special with the local fire district or your local building code that I haven't looked up yet. But typically that wouldn't trigger something for the neighbor. It would only be if the neighbor improved their property that they would then have to comply. And that compliance would have nothing to do with the location of our building. So even if we kept our building 30 feet from the property line, it's the fact that their building is near the property line that triggers a fire requirement for them. So as far as our property goes, yes, where we're 12 feet off, we're going to probably, I think that winds up with like a 1 hour wall. Where we're close to 20 feet off, I think there's no fire rating required for that. So anyway, it was, like I said, very helpful to meet with staff and kind of go through these comments and their comments, and then have a chance to make some updates before this meeting. So sorry for the kind of 180 on some of those staff's presentation, but hopeful that this kind of moves us more towards a compliance and facilitates this conversation.
So Jeff, this is Andy here. I've got what's the grade of the first floor? I mean, how deep is this underground parking going to be?
So it's a challenge. So what we're doing right now is actually stepping. So you can see it on the rear elevation here. The garages, the entry for the garage is only about a half a level down from the main level slab. So we have a little bit of site grading from front to back. The alley is about 18 inches lower than the street. So coming off the alley, we've got a little bit of progress already in terms of getting down into a basement. But we only do manage about, like you kind of see it there, about 3 feet of fall before we hit the doors. And then once we're inside, we can continue to slope that slab down. So what we're proposing to do is essentially slope so this is the west elevation, the front of the building. Sorry, the front of the building being on the right and the alley being back here on the left. Basically the basement slab is going to come through on a slope. And we're going to step the floor inside to match that slope. So the commercial space will be at grade at the front of the building, and we'll still be able to maintain 10 feet of clearance. So essentially the slab at the front will be about 9 feet deep after we deal with curb and sidewalk and slopes outside. And then it'll slope up from there.
You'll be as deep as 9 feet below grade, or?
That's currently what we're looking at. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm sure you'll do groundwater testing. I mean, I've
Yeah.
got an old, and it should have been filled in long ago, but I have an old surface well right on the other side of the fence from your property there. And
Okay.
typical groundwater level, there's about 3 feet. So it'd be way,
That's
way-
good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but I'm glad you're moving the parking in that kind of location, but it'll be interesting to see how it works. So.
Yeah, we were aware of high groundwater in general, and actually staff was able to give us some examples of recent development and what their soils test results were.
Yeah.
And it was pretty varied, but we're going at this, we're trying not to be naive about it, but we are aware
Yeah.
that it could
Might
be
take a
challenging.
backhoe out and dig a hole there and see what you get.
Right. Well, it sounds like a shovel if they were only going 3 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jeff, if you're going for the affordable housing aspect and there's no limit on unit number, why are you saving the cottage?
So right now we're saving the cottage because the cottage exists. So in that sense, it has some value. It also is part of the neighborhood. It's been there for a long time. It's a structure that Tom, the owner who's there in the room, he's got some history with. So like the idea right now is to try to save the cottage.
It does have a long history.
Yeah. Well, and sorry, I missed who was born there, but
Well, I think I'm correct in that. I've heard from the Claytons that Cliff was born there actually in that building. So
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so that's why we're saving it is, no, I'm just,
no, I know, but Cliff was Cliff was the son of our first mayor. So
but yeah, so I mean, primarily saving it because as an existing structure, it has some value. It is not an amazing structure, and it certainly is going to need work to be more habitable by the time this whole project's done. It also does give us the opportunity to use that structure as a place for like the general contractor to office out of while they're doing this construction, facilities like that.
Does it have a foundation?
What's that?
Does it have a foundation?
I honestly don't know.
I don't think so. Well, we'll get to some comments. So so we can share the microphone and hear Tom. That'd be great. So any questions for the project designer here from Jeff?
So how many units will be in total and how many will be affordable?
So we have 15 units in the building, including 15 units in the building plus the one cottage unit. And I believe the affordable requirement is 20% of the units, but I need to go back and check.
Yeah, it's 20%. So if they're at 15 exactly, that would be 3. I think 16, we would have to round up to 4. I'm doing the math right, if that matters. But but yeah, 20%, minimum 20%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you counting the cottage?
You'd have to.
Yes, yeah. So as a unit on the site, we would include that in our
So
ratio.
is that 15 with the cottage or without?
It's 16 with the cottage.
16 with the cottage, so
So-
wouldn't you have to
so
round up to
basically-
4?
Basically, they can make the cottage an affordable unit and then have 3 in the
Yeah. okay.
building.
So
Yeah.
we're talking 4 now.
Yeah,
Okay.
3 in the building either way. You knock down
Right,
the cottage, still
right.
3 in the building.
That's
Exactly.
a good way to look at it.
Any other questions for Jeff? So any comments from the public?
I like the idea of underground parking.
Yeah.
I don't know what the water table is
Yeah.
going to say about it, but
So I'm sorry, any comments from the public at all, or
Peggy has her hand up.
Peggy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
So I'm not, what is the rule about balconies in a setback? Does it have to be, can it be protrude into a setback?
No, however, in the Riverwalk Zone District, there are no minimum setbacks. So as long as the balconies don't extend past the property line, say into the Mill Avenue right of way, this would be allowed in our code. Maybe an item for discussion for the planning commission is, it is sometimes common to allow encroachments into the right of way for things like balconies or awnings. But my understanding is that that is not allowed, as our code is currently written. But I believe, and Jeff can clarify, even with the revised proposal, none of the balconies would extend into the right of way or across property lines.
I guess my concern was, I think that this new plan, which I like, and I am concerned about the water table, but I do like the fact that parking's underground. But I do think for saleable units, you need outdoor living spaces, and it looked like we lost some of the balconies in the previous plan. And, I just think that being in real estate, it's pretty hard not to have an outdoor space when you're up in the mountains. People really like that outdoor space.
Yeah, no, that's helpful feedback. And the way we have it set up right now, every unit does have a deck or balcony, or a stoop entry at the ground floor for the ground floor entry, so they would have yard access adjacent.
Okay, because it just looks like on that western exterior, there's only 2 balconies on this.
Mhm.
So then I guess you got them on, all right, on the
Yeah,
ends.
in front, and
yeah.
and there's only 3 units on that side. So.
Okay, all right.
And to answer the question on the encroachment, like, yes, right now, the way the site is laid out, we've held the building back behind the property line, so you can just see the square columns of that front, like, porch condition
Mhm.
sitting behind. It does mean that we wind up with, a 13-foot sidewalk, but maybe that's not the end of the world, especially for that commercial unit to be able to use outdoor space. Might be really nice.
Well, I think even deeper balconies would be beneficial, but I don't think, if you had to walk underneath a balcony on a sidewalk, I don't think that's a deal killer.
No.
any comments from the public at all, or? Just your name, where you live, please?
My name's Brian. I'm the other neighbor on the other side of this. And first I want to say, I'm not really opposed to this. Like, it's actually nice to see something happening on this lot finally. It's kind of been an eyesore on the neighborhood for quite a while. But most of my questions kind of go to you guys on the board here in the town with, is this style of building really what Fraser's looking for? I know it's allowed within the Riverwalk district. I know they're meeting all the requirements, and that's great. I work in construction, like it's if it didn't happen, I wouldn't be up here. So just biggest one I have for you guys, like, and for the board, everybody to kind of look at this. We bill that Fraser's funky. That's a huge slogan of ours, all this. This is exactly what they have 100 of in Fort Collins, in Boulder, in Summit County. Like, is that really what we want here? And if it is, it is. I'm not gonna, you know, so, you know, where does that go? The other side of this, I would say, is just that neighborhood was never really built with anything like this in mind. So you have all that access off the alley in the back now. That's just a little 8-9 foot wide strip. Can that handle this even? You know, does that need to get fully paved or, you know, something done there? Sewer line back there, I think it might still be an old clay pipe.
It is still, yeah, it's still
Yeah.
clay.
Like, you know, we're talking 15, 16 units now for this, like, stuff to think about there. Yeah, I do like the underground parking. That makes a lot of sense up here. It eliminates your snow storage problem. That's something on the original one when I was looking at it. I was wondering about where you're thinking you're gonna go with that. And then the building size, like, to put in like perspective, this place is gonna be a third taller than the Divide condos across the street. You know, if you go over and look at the stuff Clark's building across the tracks, like, that's how big this is. It's gonna even dwarf the stuff on Highway 40 almost. Those are only 3 stories. This is a whole nother level up. You know, so just want you guys to think about that kind of stuff going forward with this. I know there's a lot more meetings to go, and you know, this is just getting started, so that's why I just wanted to put a lot of stuff on you guys. Is this the direction this town wants to go?
Thanks, Brian. That's, you know, that we've had long discussions about architectural
We have,
standards. And,
nothing, it never goes anywhere.
well, but this is showing us, and I have to agree. I mean, I wrote the chairlift with an architect, and no offense, Jeff, I mean, 2 years ago, and I just asked her, could you guys do something other than boxes that are black and gray? You know, and I know it's an efficient use of space, it's an economical way to build, and we're trying to build things that are affordable, but kind of just gotta think there's gotta be some way we can mix this up a little bit, so. And since this is a sketch plan, we can pass regulations between now and the preliminary plan, right? So,
Yeah.
I really think we've got to look hard at architectural standards.
I totally
And,
agree.
and I would really encourage us not to let this skip, this is up to staff, but I don't think this should skip the preliminary plat stage. It's just, Jeff, you're breaking ground in a new neighborhood, you know, and all of us, like I said before, we wanted to go this direction, but somehow I think we can make it so that it's more saleable for you, keeps the character of the town more. I mean, the new building on US 40 is okay, but it's large and black and gray and square at every corner. And I just think there ought to be some way we can still build things economically and give a little more unusualness to it.
Yeah,
I agree, totally.
I would agree as well.
I was
I
thinking,
don't dislike the look of this building, but it's like Brian said, there's 100 of them in Fort Collins. So if we want to be different, it would be nice. Yeah, to have something a little more unique.
Snow on your neighbors.
Sorry, do we have somebody else talking or
Yes.
Somebody.
another comment? We're welcome to have another comment, but
It was, I think it was Peggy.
Oh,
She must
Peggy?
be unmuted.
Oh,
there we go.
I like the look of the building. I do think it's a newer look. I don't really want to think we want to create the old Wild West anymore. But
That's not necessarily what I'm after either, Peggy, but yeah,
For what it's worth, I appreciate the feedback. And I get what you're saying to that architect on the chairlift. I see plenty of those too. I don't think we were leaning into a black and gray building here. I think the intent with the brick and the stone was to warm it back up and do more of the natural finishes on this building. The same with, I mean, the architectural standards do specifically mention like timber posts to warm things up and give it a little bit more of that, I don't know about Wild West, but Western feel. And I think that's very appropriate. So I think our intent here is more of a warm tone than a cold tone for lack of a better term. But yeah, I mean, the feedback's helpful. I do think we are trying to build as efficient a building as we can just because of the cost, what it costs to build. So trying to shape the building and carve off the corners and soften it, like all of that sounds good, but it takes away from saleable space and drives up the overall cost per square foot building. So this is where we're at. But you know, the feedback's helpful and we take it to heart.
So Andy, if in fact we are going to look at changing our architectural standards in any way, then yeah, I think we probably need him to come back for preliminary plat, because we don't want him to go forward too far and then pass some, you know, code requirements that now they don't meet.
Sure.
So we either need to decide, are we going to turn them loose to go to final plat? Or are we going to ask them to come back for preliminary plat? In the meantime, if we noodle something out architectural standards wise, then at least they've got a chance to react to that before they get too far down the line. Now, I think it's unfortunate that we didn't have some color renderings, because to your point, Jeff, I get what you said about the stone warming things, timbers warming things. And, you know, we just had a black and white sketch to look at here.
Yeah,
And that's
sure.
all you're really required to do on sketch plans. So I'm thinking that maybe if preliminary plat, he comes back with some color renderings that we can begin to see what it's really going to look like in a better way.
No, I don't know if something got in the line that one, but yeah, I wouldn't think.
Peggy, you're not muted.
Usually we can turn off the water.
So Peggy, is that you again, or?
Just a minute. Would you go in the bathroom and talk on the phone? Since my husband's on the phone, sorry.
That's okay, Peggy.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think that we're in for the rewrite of the whole architectural control. I think there was, I'm assuming I wasn't in the Riverwalk design control, but I think that was a major point. So, I think maybe having some discussions about the materials and a color graphic would be beneficial.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I'm good.
Anybody
I
else?
like it. I like the plan in general.
Yeah,
And I like that we're dropping the parking underground.
helps a bunch.
If we can do it. Of course, they do make pumps for groundwater
Oh, they do. Yeah, there's ways to deal
and
with it.
underfloor drains. So I'm not worried that they can't do it.
Are we saying they don't have to come back with preliminary?
Well, that's it's up to staff, right there. Is that?
Let me double check in the code real quick as we're discussing it, but I think given the tenor of the planning commission, staff is completely fine with holding them to a preliminary
Well,
plat
this is the whole
submittal.
new plan we're looking at tonight.
That's what I was gonna
what we
say.
saw in
Is
the packet.
yeah,
So,
the packet is very
Yeah.
different. We
Yeah.
like all the changes, but it's drastically different. So I think it should go back
Yeah.
for preliminary.
So Jeff, just do some thinking. I know that that it's expensive to do radical things, but colors and materials are going to help. But massing and roof lines and the way you've got the roof now, it looks like it's draining within the building, which is great, because when we're up against these setbacks and things, the last thing you want are 45-foot avalanches coming up onto the neighbors. So it's tough to do radical things with roof lines when we're starting to talk about these type of setbacks and density. But just do some thinking about that, and see if there's maybe some ways to funkify it. If that's a verb, but just make it a little bit more unique. I mean, we are struggling. It's very hard to find uniqueness, and as a town, we've tried to put that across in this the Fraser funky type thing is just a fairly it's just a it's hard to find the right nomenclature for it. We're trying to remain a unique town, so.
Okay. I'll figure out what that means.
Yeah.
No pink flamingos though.
Yeah.
That's my go-to.
Yeah.
Well, so I don't know if you ever noticed on the corner there as you turn in the alley, my Acme shed.
Yeah, I did.
Everybody asks me what it is, and if you look closely at the saw blade that hangs there, it's a sticker that my grandniece made, and it's a picture of the Roadrunner, and it says "beep beep" for service. And I did just come up with a Roadrunner steel statue I'm going to put on top of that shed. I hope I won't get in too much trouble. It's not very big, but anyway, so it's my Looney Tunes illusion there on the corner. But anyway, we're trying, so in our own way to make this town fun for sure. And I do like the fact you're getting units. I really like the fact that you're looking at affordable units because commercial is a struggle right now, but that's a particular struggle to have affordable units. So I'm really happy that you're looking at that. So, but I hope you take Brian's feedback to heart and come next door, you guys, and say hello for sure. So any other questions, comments from the public? Okay, anything else from the board?
No.
So we don't really need an action on this, do we? Or
No, we don't. I think, the discussion will be documented in the minutes.
Yeah.
Staff will direct the applicant to submit a preliminary plat application. I think the preliminary plat itself should be fairly straightforward, just a plat that combines these two lots. But concurrently with that, I think we'd want to see again, just, this sketch plan with the revisions made and have staff, review that kind of as the first step of the site plan application, and that way we can bring that back to the planning commission concurrent with the preliminary plat and discuss some of those things. Certainly the building design, the alley only access is another topic for staff to investigate and analyze and consider.
I'm
But
sure the public works will look at that sewer line in the alley, of course.
absolutely.
Yeah, and make sure that these are going to work for this type of traffic. So
Mhm.
that was Harley Alley actually for quite some times.
Oh,
If it needs a name, so
good to know.
okay. And thanks, Jeff, for responding really quickly to the design and some of the feedback from staff and coming up with pretty much a new plan here. That definite improvements. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
No,
Yeah,
thank
thank
you,
you.
and thanks, staff.
Yep.
Okay. So we have a draft code amendment for the land dedications and fees in lieu of.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Miller. I don't have a presentation prepared this evening just because I think it's easier. It's a fairly straightforward code amendment to discuss, and if there are any questions, we can pull up the relevant documents. But essentially, this code amendment would just implement the updated land dedication or fee in lieu of land dedication that the East Grand School District has adopted, and Fraser has also adopted by approving an IGA with the school district earlier this year. So really, in effect, all this code amendment is doing is updating our code to reflect this adopted IGA. And because the IGA is adopted, this is our current procedure. But updating the code makes that process transparent and just better documented for the public, developers, applicants more generally. Generally speaking, the fees that are that would be charged are decreasing previous to what was the prior policy. The prior, policy and calculation dates back to 1998, so it is quite outdated. And even though these new fees are lower, they reflect current demographics and population trends in the East Grand School District boundaries. So, I will,
Basically fewer students.
yes,
Family, yeah.
yeah, I think since, in the last 20 years, since that last study, the student population has remained relatively flat, whereas the population in, the school district boundaries has generally increased. So if that trend continues, in the future, we can expect for every housing unit that is constructed, fewer students would be um, part of the school district. One of the great things about the IGA between the town and the school district is that this study and that evaluation will be revisited at least every 4 years. So certainly it's going to respond more quickly to demographic changes than has been the case previously.
Yeah, this is something that's come in front of the board a bunch. I hate that the fees are going down. I don't think it's necessary, but they have to follow the survey. So I'm just happy that it's going to happen roughly every 3 years from now on. So if we start seeing demographic changes, people staying with kids, then the fees will go up again.
And there are other fees in lieu of involved with this too, or just the school?
Really just the school. I can pull up the draft ordinance language though, because there are some, more readability formatting type changes to our parkland dedication language. And I'll share my screen here so we can talk through those. The purpose of this is really just to make clear in our code what our current policy is. So scrolling down to this section, again, bolded underlined text is new text that is being added to our code. So specifically this sentence right here about payment in lieu of land dedication for parks and trails being 5% of the subject real property. This is consistent with our current policies. It's consistent with the resolution that was passed in 1998. So it's just reflecting that in our code where we look at the total subdivision area, take 5% of that, and that 5% area should either be dedicated as public parks and trails, or if it's not, then the applicant pays the equivalent value of that, whatever that 5% acreage is multiplied by the fair market value of the acreage. So, yeah, and a lot of this language admittedly comes from the town of Winter Park and their Unified Development Code. Just cleaning up our own code language so that it's consistent, especially with the school land dedication and fee in lieu. That language is wholly similar as town of Winter Park, and it makes sense given that both municipalities are part of the same school district. We should implement this in the same way. The IGA between Fraser and the school district is substantially similar, if not identical, to the one between the town of Winter Park and the school district. So
But Granby, Grand Lake.
I am just less knowledgeable on theirs, but I would imagine that their IGAs are substantially the same as ours.
And as far as changes to the parks, you're just removing some language or?
Really adding more language. So going back up to this section here, which talks about land dedication standards. So things, if land were to be dedicated for park use or trail use, we're not modifying anything here. So prime example, in the case of a parkland dedication, it has to be at least 3,000 square feet for the town to consider that a usable park area. And so this section here is all about school fees, or school land dedication, I should say. So this is all new language related to school land dedication specifically. And then in the fee in lieu of land dedication section, this subsection B specific to schools, again, just implementing the rates from East Grant study. and looking at the language for parks specifically, again, I think it's wholly consistent with our current policy and practice. Just, it references our new comprehensive plan and the parks, recreation, open space and trails element, so if the area that the development, if it would dedicate a park in an area that's not needed or not consistent with the comprehensive plan goals, for example, that's one reason why a fee in lieu might be accepted. And then it just has some additional language about if there's, you know, an inability for the town and the applicant to reach an agreement on the fair market value. It just adds some additional language here about, okay, what happens then? Whereas before it simply said an independent appraisal shall be obtained at the applicant's cost. So
Then is it clear that parks are public or?
yes, I believe every time the word park is used here, it is also has the word public.
Okay.
The other thing is that if land is dedicated, it is dedicated to the town. So the town would own that parkland dedication.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
Any questions, Bob or Peggy? Peggy, do you have any questions or?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. All right, so any other discussion? So, okay. So the motion would be, we've got several things here. Is there any motions you need? Oh, I'm sorry, public. I'm sorry, public. Any public input? Sorry, Clark. Sorry, thank you.
Hi, Clark Lipscomb for the record, and the questions are really for Garrett. I guess my question, there's a lot of amendments here and there's no real clear kind of red line, here's what was changed exactly, et cetera, that is obvious, which I always like. I'm always skeptical of government, as you all probably understand,
So
and I
Clark,
think
yeah,
I
I
well
think-
should be.
So,
No offense intended.
So Clark, I'm
Being
sorry.
honest.
Clark, just a second. I think,
Yeah.
Gary, you've got things underlined and crossed out, don't you, as far as?
Just on one of them. So the question is really, is there some kind of, what precipitated these amendments? I don't care that one from 1998, if it worked, it worked. I mean, was there something in particular? There's not a lot happening in our town developmentally. Great to see this gentleman doing a project. I love seeing other people investing and trying to develop in our community. But my core question really is, I feel like, there's things that are done kind of with no rhyme or reason, or, hey, this was actually a real problem that we realized and we should address this. So the question is to Garrett, there's, I don't know, 5 amendments here of pretty important items. And I mean, Fraser doesn't have to agree with an IGA with the school district. I mean, you don't have to adopt an IGA to agree with the school district on their fees. They don't rule over you, right? As an example, if it truly lowered fees, I don't have a problem with that given the voter base or the tax that the voters passed to build the new school for the growing population in Granby. That was $80 million, if I recall properly. I think some of it went here for the expansion of this school. Don't agree that our population in schools is flat. It may be declining post-COVID, but we didn't just spend all this money, through the taxpayer vote to fund all these new schools because our, schools weren't growing. So the bottom line is the schools have other means of revenues, and I paid a lot of money into the brick and mortar, what I call the brick and mortar fund, for the impacts that developers like me have on our school system, right? Creating housing and bringing people to our community. And the problem was I saw that squandered and used for roof replacements because we had a school district that didn't manage its finances properly for a very long time. And they didn't build replacement reserves on critical items like roofs that, one day have to be replaced. And developer cash in lieu, or I even tried to give them land at one point because I thought land was more appropriate for really addressing impact of the theoretical growth in population that comes from development. But they didn't want that. They just wanted the money that they didn't use very wisely. So it concerns me that these things are being done. And the question is, did the board direct Garrett to do these things? Did he just decide to go do them? What precipitated all of these changes, and are they really necessary?
We'll let Garrett address it.
Yeah, so I guess first starting and I'll share my screen. In the packet, there are a total of 6 documents associated with this item. The first being the staff report, the second being a planning commission resolution that recommends approval of this ordinance, and specifically attachment 2 is that draft ordinance that has text that's bold and underlined are additions, text that has strike through are deletions from our code. So it should be very clear and transparent what text is being added, what text is being removed, what sections. We are proposing to delete an entire section that is no longer relevant, talking about if land is conveyed to the town for a public school, then when is it transferred to the school district? That is not consistent with the IGA. Land would just be dedicated to the school district. So again, this is the ordinance. There is one draft ordinance in the packet. It is attachment 2. In terms of the IGA, that has been approved by our board. That was approved by the board in February. The document that is in the packet is signed and executed. You can see the mayor's signature here, as well as that of the school board president. So the town is operating under this IGA as of January 1st of this year. I guess the impetus of all this came from the school district when they completed this new study, this new analysis for land dedication or fee in lieu of land dedication last year. And after this study was completed and adopted by the School District Board of Education, they worked with the various municipalities and the county within the school district to update our own regulations to be consistent with this study. So
That was the impetus.
that was the impetus. It is not coming from me, it is coming from the school district. And our code should reflect our policies and our regulations. And given we now have a IGA that we are operating under that dictates and spells out the process for this land dedication or fee in lieu, it would be extremely appropriate and very transparent to update our land development code to be consistent with this IGA. And when our regulations and policies change, we will update our code at that time, right? So,
So it's intergovernment agreement. basically.
yes,
So
yes.
between the two governments.
Mhm.
And the school district came to us with data showing that school numbers are going down as far as the relation to land and development. So to keep the fees fair. And I agree with Brian. I'd like to see money going into the school district, but I'd also like to see lower cost housing as well. So we need to keep those fees based on reality.
Mhm.
And so where did the parklands changes come
Yeah,
from?
exactly.
Yeah, I think the parkland dedication changes just, again, in talking through what they are, first, there are no changes to if the town were to accept land for park purposes or trail purposes. No changes are being made. We are still having the same requirements and standards. No hazardous geological conditions or steep slopes. It should be a logical link to other open spaces or trails. And again, minimum 3,000 square feet in size. And then the requirements for trails here. So those are not changing. The only thing that's been added related to payment of a fee in lieu of parkland dedication is really the most, I guess, pertinent or important thing is the addition of this subsection 2 that clearly states that it shall not exceed 5% of the fair market value of the subject real property. And where that comes from is this resolution from 1998, where, let me just have the whole text open. This is the formula to be used in calculating provision of parkland dedication or a fee in lieu. And that's where that 5% comes from. So it's just putting that into our code. Other,
Puts a lid on the dedication based on appraisal, but there's still no more than 5%.
mhm.
And
And then,
your other changes that have to do with appraisals just sounds like it's more of a way to mediate between the two parties rather than just having to send it straight over to an appraiser on the town. So it seems like it makes it a little easier to reach an agreement without further expense. So
yes, I agree. There is some additional language added about payments for school sites being made payable to the school district directly. The town is not accepting that money. It goes straight to the school district. However, payments in lieu of land dedication for parks and trails come to the town. Those payments, again, this is consistent with town practice. Those payments are required at the time of recording a final or as-built plat with the county. Or if there's not a subdivision required for a proposed development, then it's payable when a building permit is issued. Again, I think this is wholly consistent with our current policy. Language is added about funds that are provided for in lieu of parkland dedication shall be placed in a specific account and only withdrawn for the purposes listed here in this subsection 2. This is new language to our code. It didn't previously speak to withdrawal from the fund for parkland dedication or fee in lieu. This struck through language here. It simply said acquisition of reasonably necessary sites and land areas, or for capital outlay purposes for parks, trails, recreational facilities, or development of sites for those purposes. So that's kind of broad. We have added some additional detail here, but it is still wholly consistent with the purpose of acquiring parkland, improving existing parks, doing designs and planning for park and recreation facilities, etc. So, and again, this section has been deleted because it's no longer necessary, and then there are no changes to these subsequent sections other than just renumbering them because this section has been deleted. And then we've added a handful of definitions related to schools.
Okay, so I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah.
But to be clear, there's not been any problems or issues that have exacerbated this or caused these changes. Because I mean, I'm at almost every meeting, and I'm not aware of anything with regards to these. But one thing that I am concerned about is under your public, and this I believe is an addition under the public. I can't see your TV, but public park and trail fee in lieu amount calculation. It sounds like a payment in lieu of dedication of land for public parks and trails may be accepted in the event the board of trustees determines that parks are not needed within the area development due to the size of development or proximity to other parkland, blah, 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 blah. So that's new language. And I think previously it's the subdivision developers can either say, I want to dedicate this park to the town. I've actually tried to dedicate trails to the town I can remember, and they're like, we can't take care of them. So kind of an issue on public trails. So it was a common question, Catherine, would you dedicate the town? I'd be glad to.
Sure.
Can you take care of it? And the answer is no. So one of my core questions here is, it seems like you're taking an option off the table for a private landowner and putting it at the hands of the board to say, I mean, what would happen? Let's just use Meyer Lot as a great example. We're in with sketch plans and have subdivisions going and engineering's going like crazy on those two properties. I haven't heard from the town that they want to park on any of that property, but let's just play it out. If they did, when would they tell me? into this scenario. And exactly, who would determine where that would be? Is it up to the board? Is it up to the developer who's investing town and money in the town? I mean, I think you can see where I'm going. I think you keep putting more and more impediments to private investment in our community, and putting a lot of unknowns. So let's take, for example, I hear you want to annex the Jones Ranch. Okay, that's 500 acres. I don't know. We're fighting over my meadow, but we're going to go develop that one. That's interesting. But regardless, what happens under that scenario? Is there a park there? Do they pay $2.5 million to the town in lieu of that? That goes to other park. I mean, what happens, Garrett, and who determines it?
So Clark, we're just trying to plan, I mean, we want our
I
parks to
appreciate
fit
that.
together. We want
Andy,
access between them. So I think
And-
it just fosters a
I love the
conversation.
planning, and
Well,
all I'm
let-
doing
let
is
me finish. It fosters planning by the town in conjunction with the developer. If you came forward with a park that was lovely, but it was completely surrounded by homes and we couldn't get to it, there'd be no reason for the town to have this as a public park. And I don't think you would do that, but it could happen. So, but if these are public parks, it becomes Fraser property. Fraser should have the ultimate authority to say whether we can take care of it, whether it fits into the town master plan as far as where parks go. So I think that the town does need to have authority over parklands. So
yeah, but they could have that authority written differently. The developer and the board may mutually agree upon that. Like you
Well,
could
how do
have
you mutually agree?
a 5% fee, but in this scenario, it's out of the developer's hands. It's
Yeah.
in the board's hands. And as we just saw, there's a lot of consternation over the river district that was rammed through and has, no architectural guidelines. This is not the first time I've heard concerns about modern architecture and how it fits into our traditional community.
Yeah.
I do get compliments regularly about the, much more traditional, little bit, Trine Mountain modern type architecture that I'm maintaining. And I believe that. I agree with everything Brian said, that I was just in Jackson Hole and I was shocked to see, 4-story modern buildings next to an old log cabin that's probably 150 years old. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, to me, we can go to the city, but we live in the mountains. So again, ill thought out. And what I'm doing, Andy, is because I've experienced almost every one of these things routinely, and I think I probably have, I don't know, 10 subdivisions in process with the town at least, plus, a ton of final plans going for years. And because of my experiences and the things that I've run into that cause more delays, cause more reviews, cause more money, and basically cause any other person like him looking to invest in the town go, geez, do we really want to invest in Fraser? I mean, I want to encourage investment and I want to avoid pitfalls, but I want clarity. And this doesn't create clarity. It's written by Garrett. And I understand why he wrote it the way he did. And he knows I like clarity, but we don't get a lot of clarity. And hence why we're on 8 and 9 reviews on subdivisions, right? I mean, this poor gentleman here will be here 3 years from now trying to get his project approved. Okay. So I'm just saying we already have enough challenges in getting development and investment in our community. I mean, just think of the money that would already been pumped into our town and the housing that would already exist in the commercial space that would already exist if we weren't running into review after review after review on endless stuff like this that basically, what you would say is, well, this is my interpretation of it, or,
So
what was the term earlier? More correct,
Clark,
more
Clark,
correct. So there's more than one
Clark.
correct answer.
Clark,
I mean, that's the issue.
Clark, excuse me, we're wandering way afield of this language and we'll focus on
But
this
we're not.
language.
The point
We are,
is,
no,
this language isn't clear.
okay, and you made your,
Where it is,
we made your,
it
you
is
made your
clear
point.
that the town board would decide
Okay.
without
thank you.
any input from a
Okay,
developer.
You've had more than your 3 minutes. Let us
Yeah.
talk.
Well,
about
thank
this
you
a
for
little
giving
bit
me all
more.
the time.
I appreciate it.
But
Thank you.
the point is, I'm trying to be protective of private sector investment.
Yeah, okay,
And I would like y'all to
But-
be respectful of that too, because it's hard to do in this community.
all right, thank you,
Okay.
sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all the time, by the way.
Yeah.
It was way more than 3 minutes. Would you like me to sit down now?
That's, please. Okay, so, I mean, basically, I do think the ultimate authority on parklands needs to remain with the town. And and I believe this is fairly clear on that. Garrett, do you see any?
I agree, and I think instead of talking through rhetorical questions, it would be maybe illuminating to look at something that Mr. Lipscomb submitted last summer, a sketch plan for Meyer Lot 1. This is the wedge-shaped property bounded by County Road 72, Elk Creek Drive, and the Union Pacific Railroad. It has Elk Creek running through the property. Great natural feature amenity. In town staff's review of the sketch plan, I would point everyone to comment number 6 here. We lay out the fees in lieu of land dedication that would be required for this project. Specifically, subsection B deals with the fund, and provides the dollar amount for the parkland fee that would be due if land was not dedicated. And we say specifically in our review, town staff may consider the dedication of parkland of sufficient area along Elk Creek, basically. And if this land dedication is provided and meets or exceeds 5% of the total subdivision area, then there's no fee in lieu payment of, required. So I think, in my opinion, this is very clear, especially at a sketch plan stage, to give the option to the applicant. Hey, we think Elk Creek would be a great public park and trail facility for the town to own. Please consider that. If you don't want to give us that land, that's fine. You can pay the fee in lieu. Okay, so that is what we have provided, and I think that's consistent with some other sketch plan reviews that we've done. And ultimately, any subdivision of this size that is, has the option to dedicate parkland, if it's that big, then it is going to come before the Planning Commission and board, right? And we are going to have this discussion of, is there the opportunity for a parkland dedication? Does it make sense? Or would the town rather have that fee? And I don't think it's fully up to the developer or the town. It is always, as most things are, a conversation between the parties, right? So that's where I'll just leave that. If there are any other questions, please let me know.
Well, Elk Creek's a perfect example, and I mean, we try to develop corridors of parks so people can travel through the community in nice spaces, and that's only the town board has that type of overview and that type of authority to make those things happen. So,
right.
Okay. Any other discussion from the board? Anybody else in the public? Yeah, you bet.
Brandon Jung, Grant Park. One thing to consider is with public parks in private subdivisions, think about, hate to drop names, but Tony Shear, what starts living in a public park right behind some nice residential developments. It's problematic, of course. And of course, we respect and understand it's we work together to do this, but a lot of times in the way the language is worded currently is it's up to the town board. And again, something to consider with this public land inside of a private development. I mean, we're in the business of selling homes, and obviously public parks and people staying in them. And we have like the Fraser Cemetery, for example, big group back there. That's been an issue for a while now too. I think talked to Sergeant Essingler over at Winter Park PD about that recently. We've had some issues, so kind of got brought out, but figured that'd be something also for the board to consider when we go through this process. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board?
I mean, I understand completely. As long as there's conversations happening, I think everyone's gonna get to a conclusion that they're gonna be happy with. So I think the verbiage does have to say who in the end has the decision, but we're gonna take all the applicants into consideration every single time.
Goal is always to collaborate.
Right.
Somebody's got to make the decision on public land, especially. So
Right.
Okay. So the motions on these, any other discussions, anything you wanted to see tweaked or? Okay. So the motions on these, Garrett, are you looking for several motions?
It's just a motion on PC resolution 2026-0301
Just the code amendment to modify land dedications and fees in lieu of.
Correct.
Okay, that's that second one.
Okay, I move to, God, I never make motions. I move to approve PC Resolution 2026-0301, recommending approval of code amendment to modify land dedications and fees in lieu.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Okay, any other business?
I have one thing. and
Sure.
I'll make it really quick. The, there's an engineering study being done about the three possible routes out of the St. Louis landing. You know, there's the Sun River folks live next to me, and they're coming up to me a lot and saying, what's going on? What's going on? We can't get any information. What's the status of that right now? And who ultimately decides where that cut through is going to go? Where does it stand? Does anybody know, or is this not the proper place? I'm just curious, is it going to come before the planning board? Is it going to the board of trustees? Who makes that decision, and where is that engineering study? Because I'm getting a lot of questions and I don't have any answers.
Yeah, the study's not completed yet. So yeah, nobody knows what the results of that are going to be. I think it's just going to go to the board eventually. Obviously, there will be plenty of public comment for that, and we'll make the study available for quite a while before any decisions are made.
Okay.
So maybe we'll even have workshops or just have it on the agenda to talk about, but not make decisions, that kind of thing.
Okay. It just hasn't been completed yet. That's just,
Right.
Is there a timeline on it, Brian, or?
There is, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, no worries. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anything else, folks?
All right.
Okay. So any future agenda items? Other than that we don't have any because our planner's leaving us?
Sure. Well,
Jared, it's been great working with you, man. I think it's your the last meeting with the planning commission, right?
well, this will be my last meeting here in person. I am leaving Grand County in April, moving back to Texas to be closer to family. Certainly, it's been a real honor, pleasure to serve in this role and serve this commission, serve our board, and work with our other town staff. I will remain on with the town remotely for a period, just to help ensure a smoother transition with whoever is brought on board. But yes, this is sadly my last in-person meeting. So
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
And
Pleasure
thank
working.
you for all your hard work.
Yeah. no,
thanks, Al. Thanks, Andy. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, motion to adjourn.
So move.
second.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks for a good meeting, folks.
Yep.